The world is full of spooky and abandoned places. The eerie isolation and the history echoed within their walls make these abandoned places a very interesting visit. If you are someone who has fun interrupting the ghostly solitude of an abandoned building, you might want to go and visit these spooky locations. Here are top 10 of the scariest abandoned places. Number 10. La Isla de las Muñecas, Mexico, an island filled with hundreds of hanging, decomposing, decapitated dolls. Just outside Mexico, the island of dolls is home to many worn-out and creepy dolls. It's said that the caretaker of the island found a dead body of a girl on the island, so he started hanging up old dolls to the trees all around the island in order to appease the girl's spirit. Later, in 2001, the caretaker himself was found dead in the spot where he said he found the girl's dead body. Over 50 years ago, Don Julian Santana left his wife and child and moved onto an island on Texhuelo Lake in the Xochimilco canals. According to some, a young girl actually drowned in the lake, while most others, including his relatives, say Don Julian Santana merely imagined the drowned girl. Regardless, Don Julian Santana devoted his life to honoring this lost soul in a unique, fascinating, and for some, unnerving way. He collected and hung up dolls by the hundreds. Eventually, Don Julian transformed the entire island into a kind of bizarre, horrifying, doll-infested wonderland. Number 9. Hashima Island, Japan. Hashima Island is a small unoccupied island right in front of the Japanese coast, some 9.5 miles from Nagasaki. The island is nicknamed Battleship Island because of its shape, and it has been abandoned for several years. But abandoned does not mean empty, because the ghosts of the past have taken over the island and its buildings. Gunkanjima opened as a coal mining facility in 1887. It was abandoned in 1974 when the undersea coal mines started to deplete. It started to attract tourists in the 2000s because of the historic ruins it represented, surrounded by the calm sea. It was also featured in the James Bond film Skyfall as Villain's Lair. The buildings were built by Korean and Chinese prisoners who were forced to work here from 1930 to just after we. The conditions of these forced laborers were hard, and some never made it back home. The people who worked here named the island Jail Island or even Hell Island. Number 8. The Floating Forest in Sydney. For all those whose heart starts beating faster when they see some old and abandoned things, Homebush Bay in Sydney is the place to visit. This is where many 20th century ships, which are no longer used, ended up. One of these abandoned ships, this airfield, is definitely the most impressive sight for all the lush flora growing in its rusted hull. The fully grown mangrove trees earned this 102-year-old, 1,140-ton ship the Floating Forest name among the locals. Homebush Bay is located on the south bank of the Parramatta River in the inner west of Sydney. This is where many decommissioned ships end up. The 102-year-old's airfield in the bay is known as the Floating Forest because of the mangrove forest that is grown in its rusted hull. Besides its history for shipbreaking and the spooky ghost ship cemetery, Homebush Bay is home to the Olympic Stadium today as well. Although there are people passionate about photographing various abandoned objects, many tourists are drawn to the bay because of the beautiful forest alone. What a sight! Number 7. Michigan Central Station, Detroit, USA. More than 100 years after Michigan Central Station opened, the historic train depot is awaiting its grand reopening, this time as an innovation hub for Ford Motor Co. When it was built over 100 years ago, the Michigan Central Station in Detroit was the tallest train station in the entire world. Now, it is just one of the many abandoned places in the city. Much of its fine architecture has been destroyed by vandals. The renovations weren't enough to save Michigan Central. Amtrak left for a smaller building and sold the Corktown train station. On January the 5th, 1988, the final train rolled out of Meigs to Chicago. It was purchased by a company. After its closure, the train depot soon became a haven for scrappers, vandals, and thrill-seekers wanting to see inside the eerie abandoned building. While humans were doing their damage, the elements were wreaking havoc and causing water damage. However, it was later purchased by the Ford Motor Company and is under redevelopment. Number 6. Sanji Houses, Taiwan. The Sanji UFO houses, also known as the Sanji Pod Houses or Sanji Pod City, were a set of abandoned pod-shaped buildings that resembled Futuro houses. Unlike the beach houses that usually come to mind for a coastal getaway, this resort consisted of UFO-like houses resembling futuropods, prefabricated houses built in the 1960s and 70s. The unusual resort, however, never hosted a single guest, never finished in construction, and was abandoned to become another ghost town. These houses, resembling flying saucers, are located in the Sanxi district, New Taipei City. Although the buildings are completely abandoned places, it is popular with tourists for its unusual architecture. The location is said to be inauspicious as it witnessed a lot of deaths and suicides during construction. Number 5. Garh Kundar, India. Garh Kundar is an abandoned fort quite unlike any other. For one thing, there is no visible sign of vandalism on its walls. Second, no encroachment has taken place on its premises, a fact made quite surprising since the fort has no caretaker. Third, it is squeaky clean, devoid of even bats that could otherwise have made a home in its innermost crevices. How could a fort, 40 kilometers from the nearest settlement, be in such a state of relative well-preservation? According to the locals Gothards, who themselves never venture into the fort is haunted. Bardic tradition is of the opinion that anyone who attempts to spend a night within is never seen again. Kundar is a small village situated in Tikamgarh district, near Jhansi, Madhya Pradesh. Located on a hill near the village are the ruins of the Garh Kundar fort. They tell the tale of the glorious past of the Changar rulers. For several decades, the Garh Kundar fort has been rumored to be haunted. It is currently under consideration to be restored. Number 4. Dhanushkodi, India. This place is a visual delight only if you dare to travel the extreme southeast jutting into the Gulf of Mannar. Most of the travel experts have named this place Dhanushkodi Ghost Town after it was massacred by a super cyclone 54 years ago. On the southeastern tip of Pamban Island, the wreck of this old city is located between India and Sri Lanka. A part of the state of Tamil Nadu, Dhanushkodi was destroyed by a cyclone and has been abandoned since 1964. Post-calamity, government, after analyzing the perilous location of Dhanushkodi, declared it as an uninhabitable place. Hence the place got popular as the ghost town. Today, apart from the 50 to 60-odd fishermen and a few local shopkeepers, nobody else lives here. The place continues to fascinate history lovers and experience seekers. Number 3. Chateau Miranda in Celles, Belgium. The Miranda Castle in Celles was built in 1866 in a neo-Gothic style. It was commissioned by Lydekerk de Beaufort family, who had left their previous home during the French Revolution. The architect who was in charge died before the construction was finished. It served as an orphanage and also a holiday camp for sickly children till 1970. The castle has been abandoned since 1991 as the maintenance cost was too expensive. The spooky-looking castle is also featured in the American TV series Hannibal. It lasted as a children's camp until the late 1970s. The chateau stood empty and abandoned since 1991 because the cost to maintain it was too great, and a search for investors in the property failed. Although the municipality of Celles had offered to take it over, the family refused, and the enormous building lingered in a derelict state, succumbing to decay and vandalism. Parts of the structure were heavily damaged in a fire, and many ceiling areas began collapsing. Despite this, it became a favorite venue for urban exploration. Number 2. Kolmankop, Namibia. Kolmankop, meaning Coleman's Head in African, is a ghost town in the Namib in southern Namibia, 10 kilometers inland from the port town of Luderitz. It was named after a transport driver named Johnny Coleman who, during a sandstorm, abandoned his ox wagon on a small incline opposite the settlement. Once a small but very rich mining village, it is now a tourist destination run by the joint firm Namibia De Beers. The once thriving town of Kolmankop started to die out after the First World War. German miners began to head south, leaving their homes and possessions behind when they found rich diamond-bearing deposits on a beach terrace located 270 kilometers south of Kolmankop. The ghost town is now a popular destination for photographers. Intensive mining depleted the area by the 1930s, and in 1928, the town's fate was sealed when the richest diamond fields ever known were found on the beach terraces to the south. The townspeople left in droves, abandoning homes and possessions. By 1956, Kolmankop was completely abandoned. Number 1. Pripyat, Chernobyl, Ukraine. Pripyat was a nuclear city founded in the 70s. It was once occupied by more than 49,000 people until the Chernobyl disaster. During the catastrophic nuclear accident, where reactor number 4 exploded, many of the residents died due to radiation-induced cancer. Although Pripyat is open to public access and has become a popular tourist spot, Ukrainian officials say that the place will remain uninhabitable for another 20,000 years. These abandoned places are not for the faint-hearted. If you enjoy exploring spooky, abandoned places as you unravel their complex history, this list is the perfect guide for you. Visit these abandoned places around the world and plunge yourself into a different dimension. Have we missed any of your favorite spooky and abandoned places? If so, do share them in the comments below. That's it for today's video. If you liked the video, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Stay tuned and thank you for watching the video.